Have you ever noticed that the more creatively you think, the more you feel like an outsider? That the more you question established patterns, the fewer people seem to understand you? It's not just in your head. Throughout history, creative visionaries have walked a lonely path, not because they lacked brilliance, but because they possessed too much of it. From Leonardo da Vinci to Nikola Tesla, from Emily Dickinson to Vincent van Gogh, creative minds haven't just been misunderstood, they've been isolated, rejected, dismissed, not because they were wrong, but because they saw what others couldn't or wouldn't perceive. Kierkegaard, that haunted explorer of human anxiety, felt this truth in his bones. He didn't just theorize about creativity, he lived its isolation. He knew creativity isn't just a gift. It's a form of suffering, a burden that separates those who see infinite possibilities from those who cling desperately to their certainties. But why? Why does this heartbreaking pattern repeat itself throughout human history? Why does society instinctively resist those who dare to think beyond conventional boundaries? The answer lies buried deep within the darkest corners of human psychology. Think about this. When you stand near someone physically stronger, you might admire them. You might even feel inspired. When you meet someone wealthier, you might feel a twinge of envy, but you don't feel your very existence is being questioned. But when you encounter someone whose mind works in ways yours doesn't, someone who connects dots you didn't even see, something fundamentally different happens. Psychologists call this the creativity threat response, and it's primal. A creative thinker doesn't just present new ideas, they inadvertently challenge the mental frameworks of those around them. And make no mistake, humans will protect their worldviews more fiercely than almost anything else. More than money, more than possessions, sometimes more than life itself. The mere presence of a truly creative person creates what researchers call cognitive dissonance, that profoundly uncomfortable feeling when we encounter ideas that don't fit neatly into our precious belief systems. And instead of embracing this discomfort as an opportunity for growth, most people instinctively reject what causes it. They shut down, they turn away, they dismiss, because the alternative is too damn frightening. But why? Why does creativity, more than other forms of exceptionality, trigger such deep, profound, visceral discomfort? To understand this phenomenon, we need to peel back the layers, to examine how our minds process different kinds of encounters. Physical strength, material wealth, these are just external qualities. We can appreciate them, even envy them, without questioning who we are. But creativity operates on an entirely different level. Unlike those tangible attributes, creative thinking directly challenges how we perceive reality itself. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our interpretations, these form the very core of who we believe ourselves to be. When someone thinks in ways that reveal possibilities we've never even considered, it doesn't just present new information, it suggests limitations in how we understand the world. This doesn't feel like meeting someone different. It feels like having your entire reality questioned. This explains why throughout human history, creative visionaries have so often been pushed to society's margins, cast out, silenced. Their insights don't just challenge ideas, they challenge identities, and human beings will go to extraordinary, sometimes terrible lengths to protect their sense of self. Reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever shared a creative insight only to watch people's eyes glaze over? That moment when you realize they're not just disagreeing, they've stopped listening entirely. Have you felt that subtle shift in the room, that almost imperceptible change in temperature when you introduce perspectives that don't neatly align with conventional thinking? This isn't coincidence. It isn't bad luck. It's a psychological defense mechanism as old as humanity itself. When people encounter truly creative thinking, their minds activate protection protocols, fight or flight, for ideas. Rather than curious engagement, they respond with dismissal, skepticism, sometimes even outright hostility. This is why visionaries, artists, and unconventional thinkers so often find themselves isolated, not because they choose solitude, but because society unconsciously pushes them away. What's truly fascinating is that research shows certainty is often valued far more than creativity in social settings. People don't just prefer, they gravitate toward those who speak with absolute conviction, even when their ideas lack any real depth or originality. This explains why charismatic but utterly conventional thinkers so often gain more influence than creative minds who speak with nuance and possibility. We claim to value creativity, but our actions tell a very different story. History provides countless examples: motivational speakers with their empty platitudes, political figures with their simplistic promises, social media influencers with their shallow certainties, all thriving by packaging simplistic ideas with absolute conviction rather than exploring complex truths with the humility they deserve. Meanwhile, those who dare to question established patterns, those brave enough to present alternative perspectives, struggle in the shadows to find even a handful of receptive minds. This creates the heartbreaking paradox of creativity. The more someone explores beyond accepted boundaries, the more disconnected they become from mainstream acceptance. But is there actual scientific evidence that people fear creative thinking? Or is this just the wounded perception of misunderstood minds? Modern neuroscience confirms it with chilling clarity. Studies show that when people encounter ideas that challenge their mental frameworks, their brain's amygdala, the primitive region responsible for processing threat, becomes highly active, lighting up like a warning signal. In neurological terms, creative disruption triggers the exact same neural circuits as physical danger. Your revolutionary idea registers in someone's brain the same way as a growling predator or raised fist. But why? Why would creative thinking activate our most primal fear response? The answer lies buried deep in our evolutionary history. For most of human existence, those long, brutal millennia that shaped our brains, survival depended not on thinking differently, but on being accepted by the tribe. Our ancestors didn't thrive through innovation, they survived through belonging. In primitive communities, social harmony meant safety, and rejection meant death. This is why human brains are hardwired, to prioritize social acceptance over intellectual exploration. When someone introduces truly creative ideas, they don't just share a new perspective. They unintentionally disrupt the social equilibrium. Their very presence challenges existing norms, beliefs, and group dynamics, triggering the brain's ancient defense systems as if confronting a mortal threat rather than an intellectual opportunity. This explains why so many creative thinkers feel that crushing isolation, not because they lack social skills, but because their creativity makes them stand out in a world that evolved to reward fitting in over standing out. A revealing study from Northwestern University discovered something truly surprising. The rejection of creative thinking varies dramatically between individual and group settings. When people interact with a creative thinker one-on-one, the walls come down. They show less resistance, sometimes even genuine curiosity. But in group settings, the rejection response intensifies significantly. Why? Because social standing becomes everything in groups. People don't just react to creativity itself. They react to how others might perceive them in relation to it. If someone feels their social position threatened by a creative perspective, they instinctively, almost desperately, try to undermine, dismiss, or ridicule it. This explains that confusing experience so many creative thinkers have lived through. Finding genuine connection in intimate conversations with one person, only to watch that same person turn against their ideas when others enter the room. Several deeply ingrained cognitive biases further explain society's resistance to creative thinking. The conservatism bias. People give much more weight to existing beliefs than new evidence, making them reflexively resistant to creative perspectives that challenge what they already know. Their minds literally filter out information that contradicts their established worldview. The status quo bias. The human mind craves familiar patterns. It rejects novel possibilities, even when those new approaches would be enormously beneficial. We become addicted to the known, even when it hurts us. The complexity aversion. People desperately prefer simple explanations over complex, nuanced understandings, regardless of accuracy. A comforting lie will spread faster than an uncomfortable truth every single time. In today's digital landscape, these biases haven't just persisted, they've intensified. Social media algorithms don't reward depth or creativity. They reward engagement, and nothing generates engagement like content that confirms what people already believe. Complex, nuanced ideas rarely go viral. They can't go viral. Instead, simplified, emotionally charged content dominates our feeds, our minds, our culture. This creates an environment where creative thinking becomes even more isolated, more marginalized, more silenced. The more original someone's perspective, the harder, the nearly impossible it becomes to compress that insight into algorithm-friendly, viral content. So what does this mean for creative minds living in this age of shallow certainties? The rejection they experience isn't just social. It's neurological, psychological, and increasingly technological. The cards aren't just stacked against them. The entire game is rigged to favor conformity over creativity. This doesn't mean creative thinkers should abandon their unique perspectives or surrender to a world of comfortable mediocrity, but it does explain why they so often feel like outsiders, like strangers, in a world that claims to value creativity while systematically, relentlessly crushing it. Oscar Wilde, that brilliant, tragic mind who suffered for his unconventionality, once whispered a truth few dare to acknowledge. Creativity is a curse disguised as a blessing, one that allows you to see beauty and possibility where others see only what they've been taught to see. Unlike the comfortable lies we tell about creativity being the key to success, Wilde recognized its double-edged nature, how it simultaneously illuminates and isolates, how it reveals and separates. He felt in his bones that creative minds operate fundamentally differently. While most people navigate life seeking comfort in the familiar, the safe, the known, Creative thinkers are driven by what he called the anxiety of influence, a relentless burning need to see beyond convention, even when doing so leads to heartbreak, rejection, or ruin. This creates an essential, unbridgeable disconnect between creative individuals and conventional society, where most find meaning in following established patterns. Creative minds feel suffocated by these same patterns, seeing them not as foundations, but as prisons. Wilde understood a terrible truth. When a person begins questioning fundamental assumptions in art, culture, relationships, or meaning itself, they inevitably step outside the protective circle of social acceptance. They see through the comfortable illusions that most social interactions depend upon. Most daily exchanges involve unspoken agreements about what can and cannot be questioned. Creative minds, valuing possibility over comfort, often break these sacred agreements without even realizing what they've done. They crave depth in a world engineered for surface-level engagement. This is why creative individuals throughout history have so often experienced that profound, soul-crushing alienation, not because they couldn't understand others, but because they couldn't pretend not to see the glaring limitations in conventional thinking. Wilde himself lived this tragic pattern. His brilliance, his vision, his genius was only fully recognized posthumously after society had punished him brutally for the very qualities it later celebrated. After he died broken, impoverished, and alone. This heartbreaking pattern of delayed recognition reveals society's twisted relationship with creativity. We don't reject creative thinking because it's wrong. We reject it because it's right, before we're ready to acknowledge it. Consider these historical examples. Van Gogh, with hands trembling from hunger and mental anguish, created over 900 paintings, yet sold only one during his lifetime. One. Today, his work sells for millions. Society wasn't ready for his vision until long after he lay cold in the ground. Ada Lovelace, her mind racing with possibilities others couldn't comprehend, conceptualized computer programming a century before computers existed. Her revolutionary insights were dismissed as the fanciful imagination of a woman with inappropriate mathematical interests. Now, she's recognized as the world's first programmer. Ignaz Semmelweis, desperately trying to save mothers dying in childbirth, discovered that doctors simply washing their hands could prevent countless deaths. His medical colleagues didn't just ignore him, they ridiculed him, continuing practices that killed thousands of women. Only years after his heartbreaking death in an asylum did medical science accept what now seems painfully obvious. Each of these visionaries shared one crucial, painful quality. They perceived possibilities beyond what society was prepared to acknowledge. And for this crime, they experienced yet isolation, ridicule, poverty, madness, death, only to be vindicated when the world finally caught up to their vision, long after it was too late for them to know they were right. So what can creative thinkers do with this knowledge? Are they destined for isolation, or can they navigate a world that unconsciously, reflexively resists their gifts? Here's the truth. Society isn't designed to embrace creative disruption. It's structured, engineered to maintain stability at all costs. Most people prefer the comfort of the known over the uncertainty of the possible, the familiar over the revolutionary. But this doesn't mean creative minds are doomed to isolation. If you've ever felt misunderstood for thinking creatively, If you've ever felt that ache of loneliness when your ideas meet blank stares, remember that you stand in remarkable company. Throughout history, the most visionary minds faced these same struggles, and many changed the world anyway. Strategically share your insights. Not every person or setting is ready for creative perspectives. Reserve your most original thoughts for contexts where they'll be valued rather than dismissed or attacked. Connect with kindred spirits. The world has always contained hidden pockets of individuals who appreciate creative thinking. Whether through books, online communities, or rare in-person connections, seek those who understand the value of thinking differently. They exist. They're waiting. They need you as much as you need them. Develop translational skills. Learn to present creative insights in ways that build bridges rather than barriers. As Einstein noted from his own painful experience, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Remember Van Gogh's words, written in pain yet burning with truth. I would rather die of passion than of boredom. Creative thinking may sometimes lead to isolation, but it also leads to seeing beauty and possibility where others see only what they've been taught to see. Society may instinctively resist creative disruption, but throughout human history, it is precisely these disruptive visions that have moved us forward. If you've ever felt like an outsider because of how you think, remember this: you are not alone. And while society often fears creative minds, it is these same minds that ultimately transform how we understand ourselves and our world. If this resonated in your bones, if you felt that flicker of recognition, share your experiences. Have you felt isolated because of your creative thinking? Let's build a community that values what conventional thinking so often, and so tragically, misses.